Your salary is going up. Your rent is going up faster. You're earning more money than ever before, and you're poorer than you've ever been. This isn't bad luck. This isn't because you're not working hard enough. This is inflation, but not the kind they're telling you about. Not the 3.4% the government reports. The real inflation. The kind that's been quietly running at 10 to 15% annually for the past 4 years. The kind that will run for the next 15 years until it destroys the middle class completely. This isn't economics. This is theft. Legal, systematic, and mathematically inevitable. And it started the moment the Federal Reserve printed $5.8 trillion and called it a rescue. December 19th, 2024. Sarah Mitchell sits at her kitchen table in Phoenix at 11:47 p.m. Spreadsheet open on her laptop, calculator in hand, trying to make the numbers work. She's been doing this every night for 3 weeks. Sarah is 38 years old, an elementary school teacher with 12 years of experience, and something is very wrong. She makes more money now than she's ever made. In 2019, her salary was $54,000. This year, she's earning $62,000. That's an $8,000 raise, 15% growth over 5 years. She should feel wealthier. She should be building savings. She should be getting ahead. Instead, she's drowning. Her rent in 2019 was $1,200 a month. Now it's $2,100. Her grocery bill was $400 monthly. Now it's $800. Her health insurance premium tripled from $180 to $540 per month. Her car insurance doubled. Gas costs 60% more. She adds it all up again, even though she knows what she'll find. After rent, food, insurance, utilities, and her student loan payment, Sarah has $312 left each month. In 2019, with a lower salary, she had $490 left. The numbers say she's making more. The reality is she's falling behind, and she has no idea why. What Sarah doesn't know, what nobody has explained to her, is that between January 2020 and December 2024, the Federal Reserve increased the M2 money supply from $15.4 trillion to $21.2 trillion. That's $5.8 trillion in new money created in less than 5 years. A 38% increase in the total money supply in under 60 months. To put that in perspective, picture this. The entire United States money supply in 1980 was $1.6 trillion. The Fed printed 3.6 times the entire 1980 economy in just 5 years. And that money didn't appear from nowhere. It was created digitally, typed into existence, and injected into the financial system through bond purchases and emergency lending programs during COVID. The first wave of that money hit asset prices. Stocks went up 60% since 2020. Housing went up 47%. The wealthy, the people who owned those assets, got dramatically richer. The second wave hit consumer prices, groceries, gas, rent, everything Sarah pays for with her salary. But here's what nobody's telling Sarah. The third wave is still building. And the third wave is the one that destroys the middle class completely. Here's the question nobody asks. If the Fed printed $5.8 trillion and inflation is supposedly under control at 3.4% annually, according to official numbers, where did all that money go? Because it went somewhere. Money doesn't just disappear. When you triple the supply of anything, the value of each unit falls. That's not economics. That's physics. More dollars chasing the same goods means each dollar buys less. So why does Sarah's salary, which increased 15%, buy 30% less than it did 5 years ago? James Rodriguez remembers the exact moment he realized something was broken. He's 29 years old, works as a data analyst for a logistics company in Atlanta, and he's been saving aggressively since he graduated college in 2018. James did everything right. He read the personal finance subreddit. He opened a high-yield savings account. He maxed out his Roth IRA. He tracked every expense. In January 2020, James had $18,000 saved. He was on track to buy a house by 2024, maybe 2025 at the latest. He kept saving, kept investing. By December 2024, his net worth hit $31,000. He'd added $13,000 in 5 years. He should be celebrating. But when James looked at housing prices in Atlanta, the starter homes that cost $220,000 in 2020 now cost $340,000. He'd need $68,000 for a 20% down payment. At his current savings rate, he'd need another 8 years. Except housing prices keep rising. James pulled up an inflation calculator and did the math. His $18,000 in 2020 had the purchasing power of $23,400 in 2024 dollars. But his actual savings were $31,000. So nominally, he gained $13,000. In real purchasing power, he gained $7,600, except that $7,600 can't buy what it could buy in 2020. The house he wanted is $120,000 more expensive. James has been working full-time, living below his means, saving aggressively for 5 years, and he's further from buying a house than when he started. He's been running on a treadmill that's speeding up, and he's losing ground. Now let me show you the other side of that equation. Catherine Ashford still remembers getting the call from her wealth manager in March 2020. She was 42 at the time, a partner at a mid-sized law firm in Boston with accumulated wealth of $1.8 million. Most of it sat in stocks and real estate, a paid-off condo worth $450,000, a rental property worth $380,000, and the rest in index funds. When COVID hit and markets crashed, Catherine panicked. Her portfolio dropped 30% in 2 weeks. She called her advisor, ready to sell everything and move to cash. Her advisor said one sentence that changed everything. The Fed just announced unlimited quantitative easing. Stay invested. Catherine stayed, and over the next 4 years, her portfolio exploded. Her stocks recovered and then surged. By late 2024, her index funds were worth $1.9 million, up from $1.1 million in 2020. Her condo appreciated to $680,000. Her rental property hit $570,000. Her total net worth, as of December 2024, $3.15 million. She'd gained $1.35 million in less than 5 years. Catherine didn't work harder than James Rodriguez. She didn't save more aggressively than Sarah Mitchell. She just owned assets when the Fed printed $5.8 trillion. And that money flowed into her assets, inflating their nominal value while destroying the purchasing power of people paid in wages. Here's what most people get catastrophically wrong about inflation. They think it's about prices going up. It's not. Inflation is a transfer mechanism. It moves wealth from people who hold currency, cash, savings accounts, bonds, salaries, to people who hold assets, stocks, real estate, commodities. When the money supply increases by 38% and your salary increases by 15%, you didn't get a raise. You took a 23% pay cut. But the numbers on your paycheck are bigger, so you don't notice. This is the trap. And it's not accidental. Visualize this as a massive funnel, wide at the top, narrow at the bottom. At the top, the Federal Reserve creates trillions of dollars. That money flows first to banks, to financial institutions, to asset markets. The people positioned at the top of the funnel, the Catherine Ashfords of the world, capture the new money while it still has purchasing power. By the time that money trickles down to wages, to Sarah Mitchell's paycheck, to James Rodriguez's salary, it's been diluted. The funnel has transferred wealth upward, systematically, legally, invisibly. But 5.8 trillion is just the beginning. That's what already happened. The real story. The reason the middle-class trap is closing right now isn't about the money that's been printed. It's about the money that has to be printed over the next 15 years. $90 trillion. Not speculation, not theory, mathematical necessity. Because the United States government owes $36 trillion in debt as of December 2024. And that debt is growing by $2 trillion every single year. Interest payments alone will exceed $1 trillion annually by 2026. There is no path to repaying this debt. None. The only way out is inflation. Massive, sustained, middle-class destroying inflation that will transfer $20 or $30 trillion in real wealth from savers and wage earners to asset holders and the government itself over the next decade. Sarah Mitchell doesn't know this. James Rodriguez hasn't figured it out yet. Catherine Ashford's wealth manager understands it perfectly. And the gap between those who see what's coming and those who don't is the gap between consolidation and annihilation. The numbers don't lie. The pattern doesn't lie. And history has shown us exactly what happens when governments print money to service debt they cannot repay. Rome did it for 200 years and destroyed its middle class. Weimar Germany did it in 2 years and annihilated an entire generation of savers. The United States has been doing it since 1971, slowly at first, then faster, and now approaching terminal velocity. The trap isn't closing. The trap already closed. Most people just haven't felt the lock click yet, because there's a 4-stage pattern to currency collapse. Every civilization that's debased its currency has followed the same stages. No exceptions in 2,000 years. And America is currently entering stage 3. Every currency collapse in recorded history follows the same 4-stage pattern. Not similar patterns, the exact same pattern. Rome, Weimar Germany, Zimbabwe, Venezuela, Argentina 5 separate times. No exceptions in 2,000 years. And the United States is currently in stage 3. Stage 1 is the foundation. A nation establishes a currency backed by something real. Gold, silver, commodities, a productive economy. The backing creates trust. Citizens believe the currency will hold value tomorrow, next year, next decade. So they save in it. They build businesses around it. They plan their lives assuming it's stable. This stage can last decades or centuries. Rome's silver denarius was trusted for over 200 years. The gold-backed dollar was trusted from 1944 to 1971. During this stage, the middle class thrives because saving actually works. You put money away and it buys the same or more in the future. This is the foundation of civilization. Stable money allows people to plan, to invest, to build generational wealth. Stage 2 is when debasement begins. The government faces mounting costs, wars, welfare programs, corruption. The bill comes due and tax revenue isn't enough. Borrowing has limits. So the government does what desperate governments always do. They debase the currency. In ancient Rome, they reduced the silver content in coins. In modern America, they print digital money. The promise is always the same. This is temporary. Nothing fundamental has changed. Trust us. Emperor Nero reduced the denarius from 95% silver to 80% in 64 AD. Most Romans didn't notice. The coin looked identical. It spent the same, but it contained 15% less silver. Nero could mint more coins with less metal. More money in circulation. Same goods available. Prices started rising. The mechanism was invisible to ordinary people. They just noticed that bread cost more. They blamed bakers, not emperors. Sound familiar? Here's what most people get wrong about stage 2. They think the government is incompetent, that if smarter people were in charge, this wouldn't happen. But stage 2 isn't about incompetence, it's about incentives. Picture a family living paycheck to paycheck, drowning in credit card debt. They have 3 options: earn more money, cut spending, or take out another credit card to pay the minimum on the first one. Earning more is hard. Cutting spending is painful. Taking out another card is easy. Governments face the same choice. Raise taxes, politically suicidal. Cut spending, riots in the streets. Print money, invisible to most voters. Every government chooses option 3, not because they're stupid, because it's the only politically survivable choice. Marcus Tullius was a grain merchant in Rome in 150 AD. He inherited the business from his father, who inherited it from his grandfather. 3 generations of careful saving. By the time Marcus was 50 years old, he had accumulated 100,000 denarii. That was enough to buy a productive farm outside Rome, enough to retire comfortably, enough to pass real wealth to his children. Marcus kept his savings in a locked chest in his home. 100,000 silver coins that represented 40 years of work. He checked them every week, counting to make sure none were missing. The coins were always there. Marcus felt secure. What Marcus didn't understand was that Emperor Septimius Severus had reduced the denarius to 46% silver by 193 AD. Then Caracalla introduced the Antoninianus in 215 AD, supposedly worth 2 denarii, but containing only 1.5 times the silver. By the time Marcus died in 230 AD, the coins in his chest were still there. 100,000 of them. But they'd buy half what they bought when he started saving. His children inherited the coins. By 250 AD, during the reign of Decius, those same coins would buy 1/10 of what they bought in Marcus's youth. By 270 AD, under Aurelian, they'd barely buy a week's food. The coins didn't disappear, the value did. Marcus worked his entire life, saved diligently, did everything right, and died watching his wealth evaporate through a mechanism he couldn't see and didn't understand. Now, contrast that with Senator Gaius Marcellus. Gaius owned 3 agricultural estates outside Rome in 150 AD, totaling about 5,000 acres. He never saved in denarii. Why would he? He was wealthy. He spent denarii as fast as he received them, and kept his wealth in land. When the debasement accelerated, Gaius watched something remarkable happen. His land, which was worth roughly 100,000 denarii in 150 AD, was worth 1 million denarii by 200 AD, 10 million by 230 AD, 100 million by 250 AD. The land didn't change. The soil was the same. The crop yields were similar. But as the currency debased, the nominal price of real assets exploded. And here's the critical part. Desperate people were selling land. Small farmers who'd saved in denarii, who needed to buy seed or pay taxes, who watched their savings collapse, sold their land to survive. Gaius bought. By the time he died in 220 AD, he owned 47 estates. His grandchildren became among the wealthiest families in Rome. Not through innovation, not through hard work, through owning assets during currency debasement. This is the first mini-climax. The moment when savings in currency becomes a death sentence, and ownership of assets becomes the only survival strategy. And here's the connection to right now, to Sarah Mitchell and James Rodriguez from Part 1. Sarah's salary is paid in dollars. Her savings account holds dollars. Her retirement is denominated in dollars. She's Marcus Tullius in 150 AD, saving coins that are being debased while she sleeps. She just doesn't know it yet. Meanwhile, Catherine Ashford owns stocks and real estate. She's Senator Gaius. The debasement makes her richer. The mechanism is identical, only the technology changed. Stage 3 is loss of control. The debasement accelerates beyond the government's ability to manage it. In Rome, the denarius went from 46% silver under Septimius Severus to 2% silver under Claudius Gothicus 50 years later. Prices exploded 1,000% over a century.
A measure of wheat that cost 100 denarii in 150 AD cost 100,000 denarii by 250 AD. The Roman government kept issuing coins with less silver, trying to pay their debts, trying to fund their armies, but the currency was dying. By 270 AD, people stopped accepting denarii for transactions. They demanded payment in goods, in gold, in anything except the official currency. The government had lost control. When currency loses trust, velocity collapses. People spend it immediately because holding it guarantees loss. This creates a feedback loop. More spending drives more inflation. More inflation drives more spending. The cycle accelerates until the currency is worthless. Here's the micro hook. America entered Stage 3 in 2020. Most people don't see it yet because it's moving slowly compared to Weimar. But the pattern is identical. The 5.8 trillion printed between 2020 and 2024 was supposed to be temporary. It wasn't. The national debt is growing 2 trillion annually. Interest payments exceed 1 trillion per year starting in 2026. The only way to service that debt is to print more money, which increases the debt burden, which requires more printing. We're in the feedback loop. The acceleration has started. Let me show you Weimar Germany to prove how fast this can move. After World War I, Germany owed 132 billion gold marks in reparations. Germany had abandoned the gold standard during the war. Now they had to pay in gold-backed currency while possessing almost none. The Weimar government made a choice. Print money. Watch the acceleration. January 1919, 8.9 marks per US dollar. Normal post-war level. July 1922, 493 marks per dollar. January 1923, 17,972 marks per dollar. France occupies the Ruhr industrial region in response to missed payments. The German government prints money to support striking workers. August 1923, 4.6 million marks per dollar. November 1923, 4.2 trillion marks per dollar. 21 months. From manageable inflation to complete currency destruction. 21 months. Helga Schneider was 62 years old in 1922, a widow living in Berlin. Her husband had been a civil servant who saved carefully for 40 years. When he died in 1920, he left Helga 500,000 marks. That was a fortune. Enough for comfortable retirement. Enough to support her daughter and 2 grandchildren. Helga kept the money in a bank account, earning interest. She felt secure. By July 1923, her 500,000 marks could buy a loaf of bread. By November, it couldn't buy the stamp to mail a letter. Helga burned the bills to heat her apartment because they were worth less than firewood. She died in February 1924, destitute, having lived through the complete destruction of her lifetime savings in under 2 years. Contrast Helga with Friedrich Krupp, the industrialist. Krupp owned steel mills, factories, land. When inflation hit, Krupp took out massive loans denominated in marks. He borrowed 100 million marks in 1922 to expand his factories.
The loan was due in 1927. By November 1923, those 100 million marks could be repaid with the equivalent of $1.
His debt vanished. His factories remained. His land appreciated in nominal terms as the mark collapsed. Krupp emerged from Weimar hyperinflation as one of the wealthiest men in Germany. He paid back his enormous loan with money that could buy a sandwich. Here's the question nobody wants to answer. If this pattern has repeated for 2,000 years across every civilization that debased its currency, why does anyone think America will be different? The answer is, America won't be different. The math is identical. The incentives are identical. The outcome will be identical. The only variables are speed and scale. Stage 4 is the reset. A new currency is introduced. The old currency is declared worthless or revalued at a fraction of its previous worth. Wealth has transferred from millions of people like Marcus and Helga to thousands of people like Gaius and Krupp. The middle class, holding currency savings, has been annihilated. The asset holders have consolidated everything. Rome reset with Diocletian's reforms in 301 AD. Germany reset with the Rentenmark in 1923. The system restarts. But the people who lost everything never recover. Their wealth is gone. Their children inherit poverty. This is the unexpected twist. The reset isn't the problem. The reset is the solution. The problem is stages 2 and 3, the 20 or 50 or 200 years of debasement that destroy the middle class before the reset happens. And America is currently accelerating through stage 3. The 5.8 trillion printed so far was just the beginning. The real printing, the 90 trillion that's coming over the next 15 years, hasn't started yet. That's when the middle-class trap closes completely. That's when Sarah Mitchell and James Rodriguez wake up and realize their savings, their salaries, their carefully planned futures are denominated in a currency that's being systematically destroyed to pay debts that cannot be repaid any other way. The pattern is set. The math is inevitable. The only question is whether you position yourself like Marcus and Helga, trusting currency that's being debased, or like Gaius and Krupp, holding assets that appreciate in nominal terms as the currency dies. Because stage 3 doesn't end with stability. It ends with acceleration, and that acceleration is starting right now. Here's the math that seals the middle class's fate. Total United States debt as of December 2024, $90 trillion. Not just government debt, total debt. Federal government owes $36 trillion. Household debt is $18 trillion. Corporate debt is $11 trillion. State and local government debt is $3 trillion. Financial sector debt is $22 trillion. Add it all together, $90 trillion. Now compare that to annual GDP, $28 trillion. The debt-to-GDP ratio is 321%. Picture this as a scale, the kind you'd see in an old-fashioned courtroom. On one side, a weight labeled debt, pressing down with 321 units of force. On the other side, a weight labeled economic output with only 100 units of force. The scale is broken, catastrophically unbalanced. And here's what history tells us without exception. When debt to GDP exceeds 250%, countries have exactly two choices: default or inflate. There is no third option. Default means the government declares it cannot pay. Bonds become worthless. Banks collapse. Pension funds evaporate overnight. Social security checks stop. It's immediate, visible, catastrophic. Political suicide. The government that defaults gets overthrown. So America won't default, which leaves only one path: inflate. Print money to service the debt, debase the currency,
Transfer the burden from the government to everyone holding that currency. It's slower. It's invisible to most people.
It's politically survivable because voters don't understand it until it's too late. This isn't speculation. This is the choice. And the choice has already been made. Let me show you exactly how this plays out with real numbers. To reduce debt to GDP from 321% to 150%, the level economists consider sustainable, you need one of three scenarios. Scenario 1. Increase GDP while holding debt constant. Impossible. Debt grows $2 trillion every single year. The government runs deficits. Households borrow. Corporations expand through leverage. Debt is not constant. It's accelerating. Scenario 2. Pay down debt faster than GDP grows. This requires massive surpluses. $3 trillion surpluses annually for a decade. The government currently runs $2 trillion deficits. To flip that, you'd need $5 trillion in spending cuts or tax increases. Every year. For 10 years. Show me the politician who campaigns on that and wins. Scenario 3. Inflate nominal GDP while real debt shrinks through currency debasement. This is the only mathematically possible path. Run 10% real inflation for 10 years. Nominal GDP grows from 28 trillion to 73 trillion. Debt grows nominally from 90 trillion to 130 trillion, adding 4 trillion per year. But in real terms, that 130 trillion is only worth 50 trillion in 2024 purchasing power. Debt to GDP falls from 321% to 178%. Close enough to sustainable. Problem solved. Except you've destroyed everyone holding dollars in the process. This is the first microhook. The government doesn't have a choice. The math forces their hand. Inflate or collapse. They will choose inflation. Every single time. Now let me show you what 10% annual inflation does to an actual human life. David Chen is 34 years old in 2024. He's a software engineer in Austin, Texas, earning $95,000 annually. David is financially literate. He reads investment blogs. He maxes his 401k. He tracks his net worth monthly. Right now, his balance sheet looks like this. Salary, $95,000. Expenses, $63,000. Savings, $32,000 per year. Total net worth, $200,000. $120,000 in retirement accounts. $60,000 in savings. $20,000 in checking. David feels like he's winning. He's in the top 20% of earners for his age. He's building wealth. He's on track for comfortable retirement at 65. Now watch what happens over 10 years of 10% real inflation. By 2034, David's salary will be $183,000. Sounds incredible, right? He almost doubled his income. But here's the reality. His rent in 2024 is $1,800 per month. By 2034, it's $4,600. His groceries are $800 monthly in 2024. They're $2,000 in 2034. His car insurance, health insurance, utilities, everything multiplies by 2.5. His total expenses in 2034 are $158,000. His savings per year drop from $32,000 to $25,000. But wait, it gets worse. Those savings are in dollars. Dollars that lost 60% of their purchasing power. His $25,000 in 2034 buys what $10,000 bought in 2024. He's saving less in real terms, while earning more nominally. His net worth in 2034 is $360,000 on paper. Sounds like he's crushing it. But in 2024 purchasing power,
That's $138,000.
He lost 31% of his real wealth over 10 years, while his account balances went up. David worked harder, got promoted, increased his salary 93%, and became significantly poorer. Here's what most people get catastrophically wrong about this. They think if they just work harder, get better jobs, earn more money, they'll be fine. But when the currency itself is being debased at 10% annually, working harder just means running faster on a treadmill that's accelerating. You can't outrun monetary inflation with wage increases. The wages are denominated in the thing being destroyed. It's like trying to bail water out of a sinking boat using a bucket with a hole in it. The effort is real, the futility is absolute. Now let me show you David's grandmother. Dorothy Chen is 78 years old in 2024. She retired in 2009 after working as a nurse for 41 years. Dorothy saved carefully her entire life. She has $420,000 in a combination of savings accounts, treasury bonds, and a fixed pension. That's her entire net worth. No stocks, no real estate beyond her paid-off home. She was told this was safe, conservative, responsible. Treasury bonds are backed by the full faith and credit of the United States government. Savings accounts are FDIC insured. Her pension is guaranteed. Dorothy feels secure. By 2034, Dorothy's $420,000 is nominally still $420,000. The bonds matured and were reinvested. The savings account is still there. The pension checks still arrive monthly. But the purchasing power is $161,000 in 2024 dollars. She lost 62% of her wealth. She didn't spend it. She didn't invest poorly. She held dollars while the government printed. Her groceries that cost $400 per month in 2024 cost $1,000 in 2034. Her property taxes tripled. Her Medicare supplement insurance quadrupled. Dorothy worked for 41 years, saved diligently, did everything society told her was responsible. And the government inflated away her life savings to pay debts it couldn't service any other way. This is the rage moment. Pause this video for 10 seconds and think about this. Dorothy cannot fight back. She cannot hedge. She's 78 years old, living on fixed income. She was told treasuries were safe. She was told savings accounts were responsible. And the same government that promised to protect those savings is destroying them through deliberate monetary policy to solve a debt crisis created by that same government's inability to live within its means. Dorothy's theft is legal, it's systematic, and it's called monetary policy. Now contrast Dorothy with Jennifer Ashford. Remember her from part 1? She's the law partner who had $1.8 million in assets in 2020 and $3.15 million by 2024. Let's extend that forward. Jennifer holds 80% of her wealth in stocks and real estate, 20% in bonds and cash. Over the next 10 years, her stocks track nominal GDP growth. If nominal GDP grows 12% annually, 3% real plus 9% inflation, her stocks grow similarly. $5 million in stocks in 2024 becomes $15.5 million in 2034 nominally. In real purchasing power, that's $6 million. She gained real wealth. Her real estate appreciates with inflation. $3 million in property becomes $7.8 million nominally, $3 million in real terms. No loss. Perfectly hedged. Her bonds and cash, about $1.5 million, lose purchasing power just like Dorothy's. By 2034, they're worth $577,000 in real terms. She lost on that portion. But her total real net worth went from $9 million to 9.5 million in 2024 purchasing power. She gained during the same decade that David lost 31% and Dorothy lost 62%. Same economy, same inflation, opposite outcomes. The only difference: asset composition. Here's the second micro hook, and the unexpected twist nobody talks about. Jennifer didn't do anything special. She's not a genius. She's not connected to insider information. She simply owned assets instead of currency at the moment the government chose inflation over default. The system rewarded her and punished Dorothy and David. Not because Jennifer worked harder or saved more, because the mechanism of inflation transfers wealth from currency holders to asset holders, automatically, systematically, legally. Let me show you one more story, and this one will make you furious. Robert and Linda Vega bought their first home in Sacramento in 2018 for $380,000. They put 20% down, $76,000, and took out a $304,000 mortgage at 4.2% interest. Their monthly payment was $1,480 plus property tax and insurance. Call it $2,000 total. Robert works in construction, earned $68,000 in 2018. Linda is a dental hygienist, earned $52,000. Combined household income, $120,000. Their mortgage payment represented 20% of gross income. Manageable. By 2024, their home is worth $540,000. They refinanced to 3.1% in 2021. Payment dropped to $1,280. But here's what happened. Their income grew to $145,000 combined. Inflation raised their cost of everything else, so they're not actually wealthier, but nominally, they earn more. Their mortgage balance is $285,000. In nominal terms, they're building equity. But look at the real mechanics. They borrowed $304,000 in 2018. They owe $285,000 in 2024. They've paid down $19,000 in principal over 6 years. But those original dollars are worth less. If you adjust the original $304,000 loan for 10% cumulative inflation from 2018 to 2024, the real burden is now $234,000 in 2018 purchasing power. They're paying back cheaper dollars. The bank is losing. Robert and Linda are winning through inflation. Now extend this 10 more years. By 2034, their mortgage balance will be around $180,000. But in 2024 purchasing power, that's only $69,000. The debt effectively disappeared. Meanwhile, their house is worth $1.4 million nominally, $540,000 in real terms. No real appreciation, but they inflated away $235,000 in real mortgage debt. Here's the critical insight. Robert and Linda are middle class. They're not rich, but they owned an asset purchased with debt. The inflation that destroyed Dorothy's savings and eroded David's purchasing power saved Robert and Linda's financial life. They didn't plan this. They just bought a house at the right time, with leverage. This creates a perverse divide within the middle class itself. Middle-class families who own homes with mortgages survive inflation. Middle-class families renting and saving in cash get obliterated. Same income level, opposite outcomes. The dividing line is asset ownership and debt. But here's the question nobody asks. What happens to young people trying to become Robert and Linda? James Rodriguez from Part 1, the 29-year-old who's been saving for 5 years and is further from buying a house than when he started. By 2034, starter homes in Atlanta that cost $340,000 in 2024 will cost $850,000 nominally. James would need $170,000 for a down payment. Even if he keeps saving aggressively, even if his salary grows with inflation, he'll never catch up. Because housing prices inflate faster than wages for people not yet in the market.
The door that was open for Robert and Linda in 2018 is closing for James in 2024. By 2034, it will be locked. An entire generation priced out permanently. Not because they're lazy, not because they're not saving, because they were born on the wrong side of the inflation cycle. This is the second unexpected twist. Inflation doesn't just transfer wealth from currency holders to asset holders. It creates a permanent divide between those who got assets before the acceleration and those who didn't. It locks in generational inequality. And there's no mechanism to fix it, because the people who already own assets vote. They don't want housing prices to fall. They don't want their stock portfolios to correct. They benefit from the inflation that destroys everyone else. Democracy becomes a weapon against the young, the renters, the savers. The majority votes to continue the wealth transfer because the majority is positioned to benefit. Here's the visualization that captures everything. Imagine 3 conveyor belts moving at different speeds. The top belt, asset holders like Jennifer Ashford, moves forward. They're accumulating wealth. The middle belt, strategic middle class like Robert and Linda, moves sideways. They're treading water but surviving. The bottom belt, currency holders like Dorothy Chen and David Savings, moves backward. They're losing ground. All 3 belts are in the same economy, experiencing the same inflation. But the outcomes are completely opposite, based solely on asset versus currency positioning. The mechanism is mathematical. The consequences are catastrophic. Now here's the part that should terrify you. Everything I just described, the 10 years from 2024 to 2034, assumes inflation stabilizes at 10% annually and then stops. It won't, because the debt keeps growing, the interest payments keep rising, and the only way to service growing debt with static tax revenue is to print more money, which creates more inflation, which requires more printing. This is the debt inflation spiral. And once it starts, it doesn't stop until the currency is destroyed or the government is overthrown. We're not at the end of this cycle. We're at the beginning of the acceleration phase. The 90 trillion isn't a total sum. It's the compounding burden over 15 years, as each round of printing requires another round to service the debt created by the previous round. This is what killed Rome over 2 centuries, Weimar in 2 years, and what's killing America right now in slow motion. The trap isn't closing. The trap already closed, and everyone inside it is about to find out exactly what Stage 3 looks like when it reaches terminal velocity. Let me show you what the next 15 years look like. Not in theory, in lives. Real people, real trajectories, real numbers. Because this doesn't happen overnight. Currency collapse is slow, gradual. Like watching someone die of a chronic disease rather than a sudden heart attack. You see them declining. You watch them getting weaker. But each day looks almost the same as the day before. Until one morning, you realize they're unrecognizable from who they were 5 years ago. Sarah Mitchell, the 38-year-old teacher from Phoenix we met in part 1, is living through this right now. Let's project her forward in 5-year increments. 2024. Sarah earns $62,000. After rent, food, insurance, debt, she has $312 left monthly. She feels squeezed, but functional. 2029. Sarah is 43. She's been teaching for 17 years. Her salary is now $81,000. 8% annual increases, compounding. The school district's union negotiated hard. Sarah thinks she's finally getting ahead, but her rent climbed from $2,100 to $3,400. Groceries went from $800 to $1,300 monthly. Health insurance from $540 to $900. Her student loan payment, thankfully, stayed fixed at $380. After all expenses, Sarah has $228 left each month. Less than in 2024,
despite earning $19,000 more annually. She's working harder, getting promoted, earning more, and falling further behind. But the numbers on her paycheck keep going up, so she thinks the problem must be her spending. She cuts back, stops going out, cancels subscriptions, feels guilty about every purchase. The system has convinced her that her poverty is her fault. 2034. Sarah is 48. She's been teaching for 22 years. Her salary is $106,000. She remembers making $62,000 in 2024 and feeling broke. Now she makes nearly double and feels broker. Rent is $5,500. Groceries are $2,100. Her car died and the replacement payment is $780. Health insurance hit $1,400. After expenses, Sarah has $93 left per month. Her retirement account has $380,000 in it. Nominally, it looks like she's building wealth. But in 2024 purchasing power, that's $146,000. She'll need at least $1.5 million in nominal terms to retire at 65, which means $3.9 million by the time she's 65, if inflation continues. At her current savings rate of $93 monthly, earning 6% nominal returns in a world with 10% inflation, she'll have $1.2 million by 65. In 2024 dollars, that's $287,000. She can't retire. She'll work until she physically cannot. Sarah did everything right. Got educated, worked steadily, saved when she could. And the currency debasement destroyed her anyway. Now watch what happens to Catherine Ashford over the same period. She's the law partner who had $3.15 million in 2024, remember? Her wealth is 80% stocks and real estate, 20% bonds and cash. 2029. Catherine is 51. Her portfolio tracked nominal growth. Stocks appreciated 12% annually, real estate 10%. Her $3.15 million is now $5.4 million. In real 2024 purchasing power, that's $3.3 million. She gained $200,000 in real wealth, while Sarah lost ground. Catherine didn't work harder than Sarah. She just owned assets. 2034. Catherine is 56. Her portfolio is now $9.2 million nominally. Real purchasing power, $3.5 million in 2024 terms. She's gained $400,000 in real wealth over 10 years, during the exact period Sarah's real wealth collapsed. Catherine will retire at 58, 23 years before Sarah can. She'll live on portfolio income, travel 6 months a year, and pass $7 million in real wealth to her children. Sarah will work until 73 and leave debt. Same economy, same inflation, opposite universes. Here's what most people get wrong about this trajectory. They think it's about intelligence or work ethic. Sarah works every bit as hard as Catherine. Arguably harder, teaching fourth graders for 22 years requires saint-level patience. But Sarah's compensation is in currency. Catherine's wealth is in assets. When the government chooses inflation to solve its debt crisis, Sarah's medium of wealth gets destroyed. Catherine's appreciates nominally. The system doesn't reward effort, it rewards positioning. And most people are positioned like Sarah, not Catherine. This is the first micro-hook. Your trajectory is locked in by what you own right now, not by how hard you work over the next decade. If you're holding wealth primarily in dollars, you're Sarah. If you're holding wealth primarily in assets, you're Catherine. The fork in the road isn't 10 years from now, it's today. Let me show you James Rodriguez's trajectory. The 29-year-old data analyst from Part 1, who's been saving for a house. 2024. James has $31,000 saved. Houses cost $340,000. He needs $68,000 for 20% down. He's $37,000 short. He saves $2,000 monthly. Should take 18 months, except housing prices are rising faster than he saves. 2029. James is 34. He's been promoted twice. Earns $94,000 annually, up from $72,000 in 2024. He's saved aggressively. His net worth is $89,000. Sounds successful, but starter homes in Atlanta now cost $560,000. He needs $112,000 for down payment. He's still $23,000 short. He's been saving for 9 years, increased his net worth by $58,000, and he's further from buying a house than he was in 2024. James is starting to realize something is fundamentally broken, but he doesn't understand what. 2034. James is 39. Earns $123,000. His net worth is $172,000. He's worked full-time for 17 years since college, saved aggressively, lived below his means, never bought the new car or took expensive vacations, and he still cannot afford a starter home. They cost $920,000 now. He'd need $184,000 down. He's $12,000 short. Again. He'll be 40 years old before he can buy a house, assuming prices don't keep rising. And here's the crushing part. If James finally buys in 2035, he'll get a $920,000 mortgage at whatever interest rates are then. Let's say 7%, because inflation drives rates up. His monthly payment will be $6,100 plus property taxes and insurance. Call it $8,500 total. On his $123,000 salary, that's 83% of gross income. He'll be house poor for decades. One car repair, one medical bill, one anything will financially destroy him. James played by the rules, and the rules changed mid-game. Contrast James with Robert Blackwell. Robert is James's age, 29 in 2024. But Robert bought a condo in 2019 when he was 24, right after college, using money his parents gave him for down payment. That condo cost $180,000. He put down $36,000, his parents' gift. Borrowed $144,000 at 3.8%. His payment was $670 plus HOA and taxes, about $900 total. On his $65,000 salary in 2019, that was 17% of gross. Manageable. By 2024, his condo was worth $290,000. He owes $132,000. By 2029, the condo is worth $470,000. He owes $118,000. By 2034, it's worth $770,000. He owes $100,000. Robert's equity went from $12,000 in 2019 to $670,000 in 2034. He didn't work harder than James. He got parental help at exactly the right moment. That single $40,000 gift in 2019 became $670,000 in equity by 2034. Meanwhile, James saved $172,000 over the same period and still can't buy. The difference isn't merit. It's timing and initial capital. And inflation exaggerates that difference exponentially. Here's the second unexpected twist. Within the middle class, inflation creates a caste system. Those who got assets before the acceleration become the asset class. Those who didn't become the permanent renting class. It's not about income anymore. Robert and James earn similar amounts by 2034. The difference is Robert owns, James rents. And in an inflationary environment, that difference becomes unbridgeable. Robert's mortgage payment stays fixed while his income rises with inflation. Rent keeps climbing with inflation forever. By 2034, Robert's mortgage payment is $100,900 nominally, for an asset worth $770,000. Effective housing cost, 14% of his income. James's rent is $3,200 for a two-bedroom apartment, 31% of his income. Robert builds wealth, James treads water, for the rest of their lives. Now let me show you what happens to retirees. Dorothy Chen, David's grandmother from Part 3, had $420,000 in 2024. Treasury bonds, savings accounts, fixed pension. By 2029, her nominal wealth is $435,000. Some interest accumulated, but purchasing power is $265,000 in 2024 dollars. She's lost 37%. Her monthly expenses climb from $3,200 to $5,200. Her fixed pension pays $2,800 monthly. Social Security pays $1,800, adjusted for official CPI, which understates real inflation. Total monthly income, $4,600. Monthly expenses, $5,200. She's $600 short every month. She's drawing down principal to survive. By 2034, her savings are down to $290,000 nominally. Real purchasing power, $111,000. She's lost 74% of her real wealth in 10 years. Dorothy is 88 years old. She worked 41 years, saved responsibly, and she's running out of money. She'll be destitute by 93. She'll spend her final years dependent on family or Medicaid. This is the reward for a lifetime of labor in an inflationary system. Contrast Dorothy with William Hargrove, 78 years old in 2024, same age as Dorothy. William retired from a career in commercial real estate. His net worth in 2024 is $4.6 million. Composition: $2 million in rental properties, $1.8 million in dividend stocks, $800,000 in bonds and cash. By 2029, his rental income increased with inflation. His properties appreciated nominally. His dividend stocks grew. His bonds and cash lost purchasing power, but that's only 17% of his portfolio. Total net worth, $7.1 million nominally, $4.3 million in real 2024 terms. He lost $300,000 real, about 7%. Painful, but survivable. By 2034, William is 88, same age as Dorothy. His net worth is $11.4 million nominally, $4.4 million in real terms. He lost $200,000 real over 10 years, 4%. He's essentially treading water in real wealth, while Dorothy lost 74%. William will die wealthy. Dorothy will die poor. Both worked their entire lives. The only difference is asset composition 60 years ago. William bought real estate in his 30s. Dorothy saved in treasury bonds. That decision, made in 1976, determined their fates in 2034. Here's the question that haunts everything. How many Sarahs, Jameses, and Dorothys exist? The answer is 140 million Americans. That's roughly the size of the middle class and lower income retirees, whose wealth is primarily in currency, wages, and fixed income. 140 million people on the wrong side of this transfer. How many Catherines, Roberts, and Williams exist? About 20 million. The top 10% who own 70% of all assets. 20 million people positioned to survive or even gain. The math is brutal. Inflation transfers wealth from 140 million to 20 million, from the many to the few, from workers to owners, and it's accelerating. This is the second micro hook. The consolidation isn't future tense. It's present continuous. Right now, today, the transfer is happening. Every month, Sarah's real purchasing power falls, while Catherine's rises. Every month, James gets further from home ownership, while Robert's equity grows. Every month, Dorothy's savings evaporate, while William's assets appreciate. The trajectory is set. The math is locked in. The only variable is whether you see it soon enough to change your position. But here's the tragedy. Most people can't change position. Sarah can't suddenly buy real estate on a teacher's salary with no savings. James can't buy a house he can't afford. Dorothy can't unretire and start a business at 78. They're locked in. The trap closed before they realized there was a trap. And that's not accident. That's design. Inflation benefits those who already have assets and destroys those who don't. It's a wealth consolidation mechanism disguised as monetary policy. The government calls it managing the debt burden. The reality is it's systemic wealth confiscation from the middle class to pay for debts incurred by that same government. By 2040, this will be complete. The middle class of 2024 will be the lower class of 2040. The upper middle class of 2024 will be the middle class of 2040. The wealthy of 2024 will own everything of 2040. And a new generation, people who are 25 years old in 2024, will never accumulate wealth the way their parents' generation could. Because the door is closing. The mechanism is accelerating. And there's no political will to stop it, because the people who vote are the people who own assets. They benefit from the inflation that destroys everyone else. This isn't collapse. Collapse would be fast, visible, solvable. This is decay. Slow, grinding, irreversible decay, where every year you're slightly poorer, every decade you're significantly poorer, and by the time you realize what happened, you're 78 years old with no money and no options. This is how currencies die, not with a bang, with a whimper that lasts 20 years while an entire class of people gets ground into poverty. And we're only halfway through. The next decade, 2034 to 2045, will be worse. Because the debt will be larger, the printing will be faster, and the middle class that still exists in 2034 will be annihilated by 2045. But none of this is inevitable for you personally. The trajectory is set for the system. Your individual trajectory is still choice. And that choice has to be made now. Not next year. Not when you have more money. Now. Because the trap is closing. And once it closes completely, there's no escape. January 2025. We're sitting at the exact inflection point. Everything I've shown you, Rome's 200-year debasement, Weimar's 21-month hyperinflation, the four-stage pattern that's repeated without exception for 2,000 years, isn't history. It's present tense. The $5.8 trillion printed between 2020 and 2024 was Stage 2, completing, and Stage 3, beginning. The $90 trillion in debt that cannot be repaid except through inflation is the lock clicking shut on the trap. And most people like Sarah Mitchell and James Rodriguez and Dorothy Chen, have no idea they're inside it. Let me bring you back to Sarah. It's December 2024. She's still sitting at that kitchen table at midnight, spreadsheet open, trying to make numbers work that will never work. Because the numbers aren't the problem. The currency is the problem. Sarah earned 15% more over 5 years and became 30% poorer. That's not a personal failure. That's systematic wealth confiscation. And here's what Sarah doesn't know yet. It's going to get worse. Much worse. By 2029, she'll earn $81,000 and feel broker than she did at $62,000. By 2034, she'll earn $106,000 and have $93 left monthly after expenses. The treadmill speeds up. She runs faster. She falls further behind. This is her future, unless she understands the mechanism and changes her positioning. But Sarah was never taught this. Nobody explained that currency debasement transfers wealth from wage earners to asset owners. Nobody told her that saving in dollars during inflation is financial suicide. She did what she was told, got educated, worked hard, saved responsibly, and the system is destroying her for it. James Rodriguez is starting to understand something is broken. He's 39 years old in our 2034 projection, 17 years into full-time work, $172,000 saved, and he still can't afford a starter home. He's starting to ask the right questions. Why does working harder make me poorer? Why does saving more leave me further behind? Why can everyone older than me own homes, while everyone my age rents forever? James is beginning to see the mechanism, but he doesn't have the language for it yet. He doesn't know the words currency debasement, or debt inflation spiral, or wealth transfer through monetary policy. He just knows the game is rigged, and he's right. The game is rigged. Not through conspiracy, through mathematics. When debt to GDP hits 321%, the government has one choice: inflate. And inflation rigs the game in favor of asset owners against currency savers. James is on the wrong side, and unless he moves, he'll stay there. Catherine Ashford and Robert Blackwell don't think about any of this. Catherine's wealth grew from $1.8 million in 2020 to $3.15 million in 2024, to a projected $9.2 million by 2034. She attributes this to smart investing and hard work. She's half right. She worked hard, but her wealth grew primarily because she owned assets during the largest monetary expansion in American history. The $5.8 trillion flowed into her stocks and real estate. She captured the inflation. Sarah, paid in wages, got destroyed by it. Same economy, same inflation. Catherine calls it success. Sarah calls it struggle. The truth is simpler. Catherine owns assets. Sarah owns currency. And inflation transfers wealth from the second to the first automatically. Robert bought real estate in 2019 with his parents' help. By 2034, that $180,000 condo will be worth $770,000, with only $100,000 owed. $670,000 in equity from a $36,000 parental gift 15 years earlier. Robert will think he's a genius. He's not. He's lucky. Lucky in timing. Lucky in family wealth. Lucky to be positioned correctly when the government chose inflation over default. James, who worked just as hard, saved more money, and made no mistakes, will own nothing. The difference isn't merit, it's positioning, and inflation makes that difference permanent. Here's the pattern that runs through everything we've discussed. Stage 1. Trusted currency established. America had this from 1944 to 1971 under Bretton Woods, gold-backed dollar. Stage 2. Debasement begins. Nixon closed the gold window in 1971. 53 years of slow inflation followed, the frog in gradually heating water. Stage 3. Loss of control. Started in 2020. $5.8 trillion printed in 5 years. Inflation hitting double digits. Government debt growing $2 trillion annually, with no path to repayment except printing. Stage 4. The reset. Coming between 2035 and 2045.
a new currency, or a destroyed dollar.
Wealth consolidated from millions to thousands. Middle class annihilated. We're in stage 3, the acceleration phase, and most people don't see it because each day looks almost identical to the day before. But zoom out 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, and the trajectory is unmistakable. Dorothy Chen will be 93 in 2040, if she lives that long. Her $420,000 in savings will be worth roughly $80,000 in 2024 purchasing power. She'll be destitute. She worked 41 years as a nurse, saved every dollar she could, bought treasury bonds because the government told her they were safe. And the same government inflated away her life savings to pay debts it couldn't service any other way. Dorothy's story is the American story. The story of a middle class told to save, to be responsible, to trust institutions, while those institutions systematically destroyed the currency those savings were denominated in. Dorothy won't blame the Federal Reserve. She'll blame herself. She'll think she didn't save enough, didn't plan well enough, didn't work hard enough. The system will have gaslit her into accepting responsibility for its theft. Here's the framework you need to ask yourself. Not financial advice, not predictions, just questions. First, is most of my wealth in currency or assets? If you're paid in wages, you save in checking accounts or bonds or cash, you're holding currency. You're Sarah, James, Dorothy. You're positioned to lose. Second, if inflation runs 10% annually for the next 10 years, will my wealth grow or shrink in real terms? If your salary increases 3% and inflation runs 10%, you lose 7% annually. Compound that over a decade, and you lose half your purchasing power. Third, can I change my positioning before the acceleration makes it impossible? If you're 30 years old in 2025, you have a window. If you're 70, you don't. The window is closing. For some people, it already closed. Here's the unexpected twist that nobody talks about. The people running the system, the Federal Reserve governors, the Treasury officials, the congressional budget committees, they understand this completely. This isn't incompetence. This isn't accidental. This is the solution. Their solution. They have $90 trillion in total debt and $28 trillion in GDP. The math doesn't work. They cannot raise taxes enough. They cannot cut spending enough. They cannot grow the economy fast enough. The only mathematically possible solution is inflation. 10 to 15% annually for 10 to 15 years. Debase the currency. Inflate away the real burden of the debt. Transfer the cost from the government balance sheet to the purchasing power of everyone holding dollars. It's not a bug. It's a feature. It's not a failure of policy. It's the policy. And here's the part that should keep you awake at night. They're going to succeed. The debt will be inflated away. By 2040, the $36 trillion owed in 2024 will be effectively $14 trillion in real terms. The government's problem will be solved. But 140 million Americans will be significantly poorer. Their savings evaporated. Their wages stagnant in real terms. Their dreams of retirement, homeownership, financial security, gone. Not stolen in the traditional sense, inflated away. Legally, systematically, inevitably. This is the trade. The government solves its debt crisis by destroying the middle class's wealth. And they'll call it necessary. They'll call it managing the economy. They'll call it anything except what it is, the largest wealth transfer in American history, from the many to the few, from the poor to the rich, from the young to the old, from the workers to the owners. Visualize this as a final image, a massive pyramid, wider at the bottom than any pyramid in history. At the bottom, 140 million people, holding their wealth in dollars, working for wages, saving in banks, trusting the system. In the middle, 20 million people, holding assets, riding the nominal appreciation, understanding the game. At the top, the Federal Reserve with a printing press, creating inflation that flows up the pyramid, extracting real wealth from the bottom, concentrating it at the top. The people at the bottom think they're climbing. They see their bank balances growing, their salaries increasing, their numbers going up. They don't realize they're on a descending escalator. The numbers go up, the purchasing power goes down. And by the time they reach 65 or 70, they look back and realize they spent their entire lives running in place. Sarah Mitchell will figure this out eventually. Maybe in 2029, when she earns $81,000 and realizes she's worse off than at $62,000. Maybe in 2034, when she understands she'll never retire. James Rodriguez will figure it out when he's 45 and still renting, watching younger people with family money buy homes he can't afford. Dorothy Chen will figure it out when she's 90 and destitute, wondering what she did wrong. The answer is nothing. They did nothing wrong. The system did exactly what it was designed to do: extract wealth from currency holders to pay debts incurred by a government that refused to live within its means. This isn't conspiracy theory. This is monetary history. Rome debased its currency for 200 years to fund an empire it couldn't afford. The middle class was destroyed. The wealthy consolidated. The empire collapsed. Weimar printed money for 2 years to pay reparations it couldn't afford. The middle class was annihilated. The wealthy bought everything at fire sale prices. The republic fell. America has been debasing since 1971 to fund a government it can't afford. We're 53 years in. The middle class is dying. The wealthy are consolidating. And the end game is approaching. The signature line. The sentence that captures everything. You're not getting poorer because you're failing. You're getting poorer because your dollars are dying. And there's 90 trillion reasons it's going to get worse. This is happening right now, today, not in some dystopian future. The 5.8 trillion was already printed. The 36 trillion in debt is already owed. The 2 trillion in annual deficits are already baked in. The 10 to 15% inflation over the next decade is already mathematically necessary. The only question is whether you see it in time to move. From currency to assets. From wages to equity. From the bottom of the pyramid to somewhere higher. The trap is closing. For millions of people, it already closed. They just don't feel the lock yet. But once you see it, you can't unsee it. And that's both the curse and the gift. The curse is knowing what's coming. The gift is having time to move. Not much time, but some. The window is open now. By 2027, it'll be narrower. By 2030, it'll be closing. By 2035, it'll be locked. Welcome to Stage 3. Population, everyone. Survival rate, 20%. The middle class trap isn't closing. It already closed.